Hi, folks. We're going to get started in just a couple minutes, but I wanted to give students a chance to log in and get ready to learn some really great information. All right, folks, we're going to go ahead and get started here. My name is Chris Washko. I am a career coach at Ohio University in the College of Business. I work primarily with finance, international business, and business economics, but get to see everybody here in the College of Business, which is really, really exciting. Have a really great presentation set up for you today just to get to have an idea of what to expect and how to make the most of the virtual career fair that's happening next Wednesday. Throughout this presentation, there might be questions that pop up. So if you do have any questions, you'll notice on the right-hand side of the screen, there is a little chat box. So feel free to go ahead and type in any questions that you have there. There is a little bit of a delay. So once you type your answers, I might be a little bit farther in the presentation, but we will definitely circle back and make sure that we answer all questions that you have. We'll either type those answers right in that chat box, or we'll actually talk about all of those either right where we are in the presentation, or there might be some of them that we hold off till the end. All right, so like I said, we are going to go ahead and get started. The purpose of this presentation, like we said, is how to win at this virtual career fair. We want to make sure that you as students are prepared to have success and ultimately get a job from attending this fair. I always like to start out my presentations by doing a little bit of introduction. For any of you that are within the College of Business, I always like to point out our College of Business career team. So you'll see my picture over there on the right. Again, I work with finance, business economics, and international business. But you'll notice James Biddick, Annie Brackley, Grace Eady, and Destiny Price all are awesome career coaches here in the College of Business that are just waiting to help you. So feel free to reach out. You're going to see some links that'll pop up throughout this presentation to schedule appointments, to access resources. We'll also make sure that we get those available to you afterwards in the comments, so that way you're able to access them there as well. Now, for any of you that are joining us from any of the other colleges at Ohio University, we also want to mention that our Career and Leadership Development Center that's over in Baker Center upstairs in 533, a fantastic resource for you to utilize. So obviously, if you're not in the College of Business, you can take advantage of all the great stuff that they have to offer, whether it's getting an appointment to prepare for your resume, to prepare for an interview, any of those different types of things. So before we actually get started on the presentation, I definitely wanted to point that out. So in it being that we are winning the virtual career fair next week, we want to talk about the keys to victory. So this is what we're going to talk about today. First and foremost, we're going to make sure that you have an understanding of what a virtual career fair is, what the software that you're going to be using is. We're going to talk about how to prepare for the fair, how to make the most of that experience, and then following up. So really, it's going to be the before, the during, and the after of this virtual career fair. So what exactly is a virtual career fair? It's a fantastic question. It's a new technology that really is just coming into light. The biggest thing to note that it is really just a digital version of a real career fair. So if you've been to our College of Business Expo, if you've been to the campus-wide career fair where there are hundreds of employers that you have a chance to talk with, it's that same concept, just a little bit smaller. Not is it just a little bit smaller. Right now we have about a dozen employers that are just waiting eagerly to talk to all of you, but it's also a chance for you to network from your room. And that could be from your dorm room, that could be from your apartment, the library, the dining hall if you want. Although I might not recommend the dining hall. It might be a little noisy there. This is an opportunity for you to be comfortable in your setting and talk to employers and really make a fantastic impression. The virtual career fair that we're using is going to be completely chat-based. So everything is going to be typed, and we're going to talk about some different ways to really make sure that we're prepared and we can take advantage of the time that we have with each employer. The other key thing to keep in mind is that each company that has signed up has full-time job opportunities that they are looking to fill. They want to hire Bobcats, and that's really, really important because these are really fantastic opportunities for you to make an impression and hopefully get an interview set up in the near future. The software, for those of you that haven't already registered and seen some of the publicity, is Brazen. And you'll notice the screenshot on the left is similar to what you'll see when you log in. You're going to have different booths with all of the different companies. You'll also notice that the Career and Student Success Center has a booth. So if you have quick questions that you want to get answered before you head in to talk to, for example, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, you can stop in and talk with me. I'll be there the entire time that the virtual career fair is running and happy to answer those questions for you. But during the actual fair, you're going to have the opportunity to enter a queue into those rooms. So there might already be students waiting. There might be multiple recruiters in each room, but you're going to have a chance to be in line to talk to some of these different employers just like you would at a regular career fair. I'll get into more of the specifics about some of those pieces later. The important thing for you to remember is to register for the fair. If you haven't done that already, I encourage you to do that tonight. Also, log in, test the software. And really, it's all web-based. There's nothing that you'll need to download. You'll just have to access the website and log in. But it's really important that you do log in on the computer that you'll use, so that way you make sure that everything looks and works okay. I don't want to have the issue that you log in and all of a sudden something's not exactly the way it should be. So we want to try to avoid those problems ahead of time by just simply registering and logging in. Again, throughout the presentation, if you do have questions, I strongly encourage you, just type those questions into the chat bar over on the right, and we are happy to answer those. So, preparing for victory. What do I need to do as a student before I actually attend this virtual career fair next Wednesday to really make the most of this experience? You'll notice on the left, I talk about what you would do for any career fair. These are things that hopefully you've heard before and hopefully you're really excited about. The first one is to update that resume. We want to have the most up-to-date resume and the most competitive resume as possible. And these are things that you'll hear me reiterate throughout this presentation, but it's really important that you are the most competitive version of you. You are able to go in and be confident with the experiences that you've had. Another thing that you should always do, whether it's a virtual career fair or a regular in-person career fair, is to research companies ahead of time. I'm going to go into a little bit more detail about that here in a little bit. So if you do have a question about that, it might get answered here very, very shortly. The last piece for just any career fair is to craft your introduction or your elevator pitch. Again, we're going to talk about two different ways that you can do that. And hopefully you feel really confident once you're done with this presentation to go out and actually craft your own. Specifically for virtual career fairs, again, it's really important to us that you log in early. Test that again. So the career fair is from 12 to 2. Log in a little bit ahead of time, 11:45, 11:40. Get on your computer, get logged in, make sure that you see everything that you want to see. You have the companies lined up. You can get in line immediately and you're ready to go. I encourage students to practice typing answers. Excuse me. Typing answers for practice will help you get acclimated to what it's going to be like in this type of setting. As I mentioned, it's all chat-based. So being able to have a friend, a family member, ask you questions, just go into a Microsoft Word document and type out some of those answers. I'll talk a little bit more about strategies for actually crafting answers here shortly, but it's really important to practice ahead of time. You might be worried that, oh my gosh, Chris, I'm such a slow typer. Or how do I make sure that I'm making the most out of the time that I'm there? Well, one of the key things is you can type those longer answers before the fair even starts. I mentioned that Word document. Go ahead and prepare some answers ahead of time. Maybe you prepare your elevator pitch, your introduction. That way you can just copy and paste it over into the Brazen software. Common questions, right? What do you know about our company? Why are you interested in our company? What are your strengths? Have those typed out ahead of time. That way you're ready to go. In addition, some of the questions that you might have for companies that you found during your research, you can go ahead and type those out, and that way you can quickly and easily copy and paste those over. Now, I add a little bit of humor in here because I know Ohio University students. You are all fantastic. You're involved. You've had great experiences. So how do I get that all on one page? Hopefully you visited the main career center or our office in Copeland 214 previously and had your resume looked at. I'm going to quickly go through some resume pointers, but again, for really specific pieces, come visit our offices. That's what we're here for. Just pretty quickly, format and content. Two key pieces to your resume that hopefully are up to par and ready to go. With format, a key piece is to be concise. We want to keep that right now to a one-page document. All right, so make sure that we're getting everything that we need to onto that one page, which I know can be a little bit challenging, but again, that's what our career teams are here for, to help you maximize that space. Always choose an easy to read font. If you have a concern that, oh my gosh, somebody might not be able to read this very easily, change it. Don't even worry about it. Times New Roman, Arial, a couple examples of very easy to read fonts. I always encourage students, 11 or 12 point font. Your section headers can be a little bit bigger, but really that's the font size that we really want. The smallest I would ever encourage a student to use is 10.5. In addition to having clearly defined sections, we want our resume to be well organized. And one of the things that means is that when we have our resume, we want to balance out, okay, if I have my dates right aligned on one section, that I follow that format all the way throughout. I want to make sure that I'm using the same bullet points, the same structure within all of my sections. And we just got a question about, I have a 2-page resume. Is it a must to prepare only a 1-page resume? Right now, we would normally say yes, but every student is in a different situation. There are certain markets that will allow for you to have a 2-page resume, but the overall goal is a 1-page for a lot of these companies that are going to be at the fair. Now, I will encourage you to reach out to us after this presentation, let us have a peek at what you have on that 2-page document, and we are happy to review that and provide feedback specifically to your document. But that's a great question. There are 3 pieces of information that you have to have: your contact information, education, and experiences. The experience section is where so many students vary so much, and that's really, really important to focus on. For the content, again, we want to have the most up-to-date information. We want our bullet points to be very, very detailed and descriptive. We don't want an employer to look at that document and not understand what it is an experience look like for you. My next slide is going to go into a little bit more detail on creating these really strong bullet points. For those of you in the College of Business, cluster is a fantastic thing to highlight. In addition, no matter what your major is, relevant coursework can really give you a leg up to showcase, you know what, company, I don't have tangible work experience specifically with this job, but I have really great classroom experience, and I know the material that I'll be using for work, and here's how. Internships, a great thing to highlight. Clubs and organizations, work experience, volunteer experience, athletics. There's so many things that could possibly go on your resume that sometimes, again, it could be hard to get to a 1-page document. So we are here to help you. Creating strong bullet points is one of my favorite things to talk about. It all starts with how we start it. Starting with a strong and descriptive verb is really, really important. Most of the time, that's what's going to happen for the first word of each bullet point. Every once in a while, you'll get a statistic or you'll get an adjective or some type of really strong descriptor that you want to add, and that's fine. But a majority of your bullet points are going to start with this really strong and descriptive verb. I encourage students to avoid saying things like responsibilities include or duties include. Get to the point. Tell me that really strong verb. One trick that I like to teach is to mimic or mirror language from a job description. You're probably thinking to yourself, Chris, what does that even mean? Well, let's say I have an experience that I am supervising a team of 10 people. Well, I could use supervise, manage, or lead. Those are all really great verbs. So I can look at a job description, and let's say the job description says lead a team of 10 social media marketers, so on and so forth. I can then just tweak my resume very slightly to say lead a team of 10. And that's a really good trick. I encourage you to show numbers. Quantify those experiences and those actions and actually show me that numeric value. So if I am supervising 10, I'm going to write the number 10 and not write it out. It's just a really quick way for employers to see that information and be able to process it that much faster. And it goes against a lot of things that we've learned throughout our schooling is to say, oh no, I should write out 10. No, just give me the number. It's a little bit different style of writing. Talking about frequency. How often are you doing these different pieces of your role, right? Are you having weekly meetings? Are you attending annual conferences every single year? Or do you attend multiple conferences? Those are great things to highlight to an employer. One of the things that we often forget about is highlighting the accomplishments and the results from your work. Do you have statistics? That's a great thing to talk about. Were you able to improve something? Did you take a process that used to take an hour, and in your internship, you were able to get it down to where it only takes workers a half hour, 20 minutes? That shows that you're able to really be effective in your role. And lastly, I have this catch-all category. It's specific. It doesn't change based on each student. I tell each student the same thing, but based on the role that you're going into, what you talk about in this category will change. For instance, a social media marketer won't talk about the same things as a teacher or an engineer and so on and so forth. But what are the skills, the techniques, and the knowledge that are specific to your industry? How can I highlight that? What tools and technology or assessments are you using? Think about the keywords and buzzwords for the industry, things that you've heard repeated over and over again in class. What are the key keywords and buzzwords from the job description. Let's pull those into our bullet points and let's highlight that we have this information to these employers. Again, for those of you in the College of Business, we have walk-in hours for resume assistance Monday through Friday from 12 to 2. We're in Copeland 214. You can also use that link, and again, we'll get this in the comments as well, so that way you can quickly access it, or you can just visit our website to schedule an appointment with a career coach. We can have this in person, over the phone, or in using Skype or another technology. It's always helpful if you email your resume ahead of time or attach it to the request as well. When we talk about researching companies, this is another really important thing to do ahead of time. You can use multiple ways to find some information about companies. Bobcat Career Link, great place to find information, especially those companies that are recruiting Bobcats, a good starting place. LinkedIn is my really big catch-all. I can find alumni that are working at the company. I can access the company profile through LinkedIn. Most companies also include links to their company website right within their profile. So useful. Those are great places to go. And obviously, like I mentioned, company websites are obviously a great place to look. The question came in about, do the companies that are going to be at the fair have specific vacancies? Yes, they all have jobs that are posted currently. And by the time the fair starts, and actually, I think it's by the end of this week, they are all supposed to have those jobs listed out in their description. So you should be able to log in to the system for the virtual career fair and see what those are. But you can also check those in Bobcat Career Link or on their company webpage. In addition to just doing general research about the company, jobs and positions that they have available, that's what we should be looking at. Are you a good fit? Are you interested? Are you qualified? If you answer yes to those questions, let's do some more research into them. Can I go and get really good answers or questions I have about those positions that I'd like to know a little bit more about? This will lead me into some of the questions that I can ask in my time talking to recruiters, and that's really fantastic. Can you find out what the company's all about? What's their mission statement? What's their vision? Where do they want to go? Who are their competitors? What do they have coming up? Those are great things to research and to be able to talk about in your time with a recruiter. It's really an impactful piece when you can walk into a room and talk to a recruiter, or electronically, digitally walk into this booth and say, hey, I saw this on your company website and I'm really excited about this. This completely gels with what I'm looking for. One of the things I always encourage students to do is, what have the companies been in the news recently about? Have they had press releases? Is there a recent success that you can talk about? And one way to have these populate for you is to follow companies on LinkedIn. I always tell students, if you have a dream company, follow them on LinkedIn. Let's stay up to date. So as they post information, we can see that show up in our news feed, and that gives us talking points. Lastly, as you do your research, what is it that you really want to know? What questions do you have about the job, the company? I'm going to go into a little bit more detail about questions here shortly, but the research that you do ahead of time is really, really helpful when trying to come up with your questions. One of the questions I get all the time, whether it's a virtual career fair or an in-person career fair, is, Chris, how do I start this conversation? I'm going to give you two different ways that you can go in and start these conversations with companies in any type of setting. You can do this in person or digitally. The first way is to open up, and it's a little bit different of the traditional elevator pitch that you've heard. But this is where we're going to talk about our name, classification, and major. Very similar to a typical elevator pitch. And that classification really should be a graduating senior right now. So, hi, my name is Chris Washko. I'm a marketing major, and currently getting ready to graduate in May, right? Then we want to talk about something that is awesome about you, right? Some type of really great experience. In the College of Business, we often call these differentiators. What helps you stand out? If I'm a marketing major, well, there are hundreds of other marketing majors. So, what is one really awesome thing that can help me stand out? And that's something that I'm going to highlight in my introduction. I give a couple different examples, maybe studying abroad, or having this really great internship or research experience, or some type of professional accomplishment. Then we lead into talking about the company. So it's something that you find interesting about the company. Again, focus on that research. And finally, we end with a question. And you're going to see mirror images of how this is so similar to a typical elevator pitch. But end with a question, tie it to the research or the person that you're talking with. So that's the first way that we can start conversations. The second way is something that you might be extremely familiar with, and that is what is typically called the elevator pitch, or you might have heard it called a 30-second commercial. When I teach building your elevator pitch, I talk about it in two different parts. The first part is all about you. I'm not worried at all about the company. It's all about you. Normally, this is the part that you memorize. It should be like the back of your hand. You know it inside and out. For a virtual career fair, you can have this typed out. That's really, really helpful. So you don't necessarily have to create this for next week and have it memorized. As long as you have it typed out, perfect. It's there and waiting. You'll notice the four things that I include here are very similar to what I talked about before. I'm going to introduce my name, my major, my year, classification, and then my career interests and how they're related to the company that I'm speaking with. I can even tie it specifically to the job. Again, this is something that you should be very, very comfortable with. That 30-second commercial is also something that you can use in an interview. It's a good starting point. If that's part one, talking about you, of course, part two is going to be talking about them. All of these different companies. Who is it that you're getting ready to talk to? Now, I always tell students, you don't need to memorize this. If I'm in person, I can have my Padfolio that I'm carrying around at the career fair, and I can have those notes about companies written down. And before I approach a table or a booth, I can go ahead and look at that. So if I'm going to talk to company XYZ, I can go in and look at XYZ and have what I'm going to talk about. And that's perfectly okay. Again, doing a virtual career fair, I can have this stuff written down and have it ready. When I say we're going to talk about them, again, I go back to that research that I've done on the company. What about the jobs that I've seen posted or the jobs specifically that I'm interested in? Have you noticed things about the culture of the company? What's the growth of the industry or the company like? Have they been in the news? Again, those research pieces just keep coming back. And lastly, just like the first example I showed you, is that transition piece. And this is where so many students struggle. Is, Chris, oh my gosh, how do I end? And that's a great question. And I always say, use these 6 magic words. Can you tell me more about? And then whatever it is that you want to know more about. Or I can ask a question. And very easily, it goes from my elevator pitch, my introduction, to passing that conversation on to the recruiter, to that employer. And then from then on out, it is just a conversation. And that's really, really helpful. Does anybody have any questions with anything that I've talked about so far? All right, I'm going to continue on and talk about what I can do during the fair to be successful. Again, you'll notice I talk about what I can do at any career fair. And then I specifically talk about the virtual career fair. Now, you might laugh as you hear this first one, but I want you to dress for success. And again, it seems so silly. The recruiter isn't going to see me. Why do I need to dress up? To me, it's all about state of mind. I want you to dress professionally so that you're ready to go and you are in that mindset. Look good, feel good. Feel good, type good. That's the kind of mentality that I want to go in with. So I always encourage students that are doing a virtual career fair, doing a phone interview, to dress professionally. Do you have to do that? No, of course not. If you're perfectly comfortable typing in your pajamas, then so be it. But just make sure you have that professional mindset ready to go. Start with hello and then go into your elevator pitch. You don't have to wait for the recruiter to start typing. You can start and initiate that conversation just like you would in person. Make sure that you answer all the questions that a recruiter has. Have questions that you want to ask. And that last piece on the left, ask for contact information to follow up. Make sure that you know how to contact them. Is it via phone? Is it via email? Most recruiters in an in-person career fair will hand you their business card. Again, that's not possible digitally. So make sure that you get that contact information before you leave. Specifically for the virtual career fair, I encourage you to be in a quiet and distraction-free space. That's why I mentioned earlier, the dining hall might not be the best place to do the virtual career fair because there's a lot going on. I encourage you to keep your sentences to 1 to 2 lines long. And I'll talk about that a little bit more here in a second. I encourage you to share your LinkedIn URL. That can be helpful so that recruiters can go on and see a little bit more about who they're talking to. Join booths and be ready. You can be in queue for multiple booths. So what's going to end up happening is once you log in and you say you have 2 companies that you want to talk to, whatever company you get in line first and you're accepted into that and there's a recruiter ready to talk to you, the other booth will put you at the back of the line. So that way you don't have to talk to 2 recruiters at one time. Once you finish with that first company, you'll be right in line to talk with that second company or third company and so on. So that's something to keep in mind, that you can be in line to talk with multiple recruiters. If a company is full, you might notice that you might have to wait a couple minutes, but just be sure that you're ready when your time comes available. Keep an eye on time when you're in the chat. It is an 8-minute limit for each student. So that means you have 8 minutes to have a conversation, but you'll also have chances to follow up, and that's really, really important. And so that goes back into being ready and prepared ahead of time. In order to maximize those 8 minutes, here are some really good tips to be successful. When you're answering questions, like I mentioned earlier, have common questions typed out already. It's really easy to go on and look at the most common interview questions or things that employer will ask. You can use something like Glassdoor. What are the things that company X typically asks? And that's a great resource to utilize. And have that response typed out. If you have stories that you have prepared, maybe you have a great example of leadership or teamwork and collaboration. Maybe you had an awesome experience in an internship that you really want to highlight to an employer. Have that story typed out so that way you might be able to tweak it and get it out quickly. I just got the question if this video will be available after the live stream is done, and yes, it will. So you'll be able to come back and access all of this information and hear these tips again if you ever need them. So absolutely, this will be available to you afterwards. Great questions. Just keep them coming. Make sure that you answer all the questions that recruiters have completely, but make sure to stay on topic. Sometimes we get on tangents. We only have 8 minutes. Make sure that we make the most of those 8 minutes. Try to keep your answers, again, to 1 or 2 lines. If you have a longer response, try typing in 2 different parts. And that will allow the recruiter to not have to sit there and wait so long. And they'll be able to read the first part of your response. And as they finish, the second part is right there waiting for them then. And just like in an in-person career fair, if there's anything that you're unsure about, if they ask a question, you're just not sure what they're asking for, it's always okay to ask for clarification. That's something that is really, really helpful. Now, this is all about you answering questions. However, you should also have questions prepared. Most questions for students come from the research that they've done ahead of time, and those questions really stand out. Again, the questions that you prepare for company X, have those typed out, have them saved in a Word document so you can copy and paste them over. The questions might relate back to the positions that a company's hiring for. They might relate to the culture or the environment of the company or the office. You can also ask the recruiter their experience at the company. These are all different types of topics that you can ask about. You'll notice the link that I provided here. This is a really great resource because the reason I like it is it breaks it down into different types of categories on the types of questions that you can ask. And those are really, really helpful. You might go to this link and find questions that you are going to ask during that virtual career fair. That's okay. But I anticipate that a lot of your questions will come from the research that you do. That's pretty typical. But have those questions prepared ahead of time. I often get asked, Chris, how many questions should I have prepared? For a virtual career fair, I normally say the same thing that I say for an interview. Have 5 questions prepared. Realistically, you're not going to be able to ask all 5 of those questions. You might only ask 3 or 4, but at least you have them prepared ahead of time in case something comes up and it gets answered in conversation. You have other questions that you can ask. Those questions that you have left over are also good things to highlight in the follow-up. Lastly, before you leave that booth, save the chat. Save that chat. That way you can go back and reference your conversation later. This will help for the follow-up and also just trying to remember back to what you talked to a recruiter about. I know students that have copied and pasted, taken screenshots, whatever you're comfortable with, but save that chat. Following up is really, really important. Companies all the time talk about the impact that it has when you as a student follow up with them. I'm a big advocate in electronic thank you notes, but there are also those that will be supportive of handwritten thank you notes. Whatever your preference is, we want to get those thank yous out the next day. Obviously, with a written thank you note, it's going to take a couple days to get to that employer. An email thank you note is going to get to them very, very, very quickly. But again, it is whatever your preference is. We also have resources online for crafting really quality thank you notes, and we're also happy to work with you on those as well. In the system, it's going to make you upload a resume, but that recruiter, that employer might ask you to send that to them outside of the technology. Do so with your thank you email. That is a really great piece to share. I mentioned in the chat, you can provide your LinkedIn URL. If you haven't done that already, you can include it in your thank you. It's also a really good thing to include on your resume. If you find that the positions that you talked about with that recruiter, with that employer, are things that you're interested in, go ahead and apply. Let the recruiter know that you applied in your thank you. Chris, I loved talking with you at the virtual career fair yesterday and hearing all about your social media marketing position. I went on last night and completed my application. It is something that I believe I really, really would be successful with. Great. And employers love to hear those things. Depending on the company, where they tell you to apply for positions might vary. It might be Bobcat Career Link. It might be LinkedIn or Indeed, or it might be their company website. So make sure that you follow the instructions that the employer gives you for applying to those positions. I definitely wanted to include more resources for you and say thank you for attending this presentation and watching. And I want to wish you the very best of luck. This is a really exciting opportunity for you as students, and I hope that you make the most of it. For those of you in the College of Business, again, our career coaches are listed on the left. You can also go back to the beginning of this video and see a little bit more information about each of them. Our drop-in hours are listed there. Again, we're in Copeland 214. We are here waiting for you. We'll also make sure that we get all of these resources typed into that chat so that way you're able to see them. And right now, we'll leave it up for any questions that may have come up throughout this presentation, or just as you've gone, you're like, oh my gosh, Chris, I really have this question that I'd love answered. So feel free, I'm going to stay on here for a couple minutes as questions come in, and we are happy to answer those. Again, I'm going to be on here for a couple more minutes just in case anybody has any lingering questions. I'm happy to answer those. You'll notice that the slide that you're seeing right now has links to register for the virtual career fair. And again, I encourage you to do that ahead of time. So each employer will be able to access your resume. Now that you've uploaded it, it's one of the nice features of this system. But again, some employers might ask for it outside of the actual Brazen platform. So that's why I just encourage you, if a company asks for it, always send it to them. But yeah, once you create your profile, it should prompt you to upload your resume. So they'll have access to it, but they might ask for it outside of the system. That's a great question. All right, I don't see any more questions coming in, so I am going to conclude this presentation. Again, thank you so much for watching. I hope that you found the information really valuable. If you do have questions, feel free to reach out to the career teams. We are more than happy to help you. Best of luck at the Virtual Career Fair.